All the young people sort of bond over ideas of how to do things differently, and so we became friends.
Hey guys, welcome to the Convo Couch. Today we've got Alex Solo, co-founder of SPRINTLAW. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks. I hate the office as well, although our office is pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah?
like arcade games and shit in it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where are you based?
Chippendale. So I live in Chippendale.
Yep.
And the office is around the corner.
Right.
Which isn't a coincidence. It's in one of those co-working spaces.
Yes.
This place called the Commons.
Okay, that's so good. It's so close.
Oh yeah, I mean, I planned that. That's the one advantage of running your own business. You get to choose where the office is.
Yeah. But like, you have a co-founder as well, right?
Yeah.
Does he live close by? Or?
He lives in Chippendale as
Okay.
well. So
Wow.
the office is literally the halfway point between our two houses.
Wow. You guys got a really good deal.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
you negotiated a lease and everything in that space.
Yeah. I mean, they're built for sort of small but growing companies, so it was pretty easy to get a spot.
Nice.
We were previously in another space. Like Chippendale has a bunch of different startup spaces, so we were in another space down the road before, which was slightly closer to his house. And then I'm like, it's just a bit too close. So
and
we
then
moved.
you made a few complaints.
Yeah, and then we moved 200 meters down the road, and now everything's fine.
Okay, so now you're both on talking terms again.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So how did you guys even start in the first place? Like, how did you meet? Where did your idea come from?
We worked at one of the big corporate law firms before, so I met my co-founder there, just working in like that super corporate. Have you seen the TV show Suits?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can imagine it was that kind of place that we were working in that environment. It's the Australian version of that. It's obviously different and there's less drama. But
Is there anywhere as near, like, as exciting as what it shows on Suits?
not really. They're really glamorizing admin. But yeah, working in that, I don't know, like it's so terribly inefficient and horrible, and all the young people sort of bond over ideas of how to do things differently, and so we became friends, talking about how we would love to build our own firm that was much more efficient and much less caught in like the 18th century, and just plotted that for ages and then sort of launched the business. Lots of use of paper and stuff like that, kind of very old-fashioned ways of doing things. So if you can imagine like lawyers, you're an accountant, so lawyers write contracts and things like that all the time. And then a big part of what junior lawyers would do is that they're not qualified to really write contracts yet, so they'll be proofreading contracts and making sure that they're right. The way in which tasks like that were done, you've got these documents in Microsoft Word, which could be sent electronically, but instead they're printed out. And then, a partner at a law firm will like go through the contract, like handwritten notes all over it, and then hand it to a junior lawyer who's being billed out to the client at $350 an hour, who would literally just be deciphering handwritten notes and then typing it. It's like word processing and things like that. Emails and stuff would go back and forth. Is just then emails would get lost, and because emails were lost, people would have to work overnight because people didn't project manage properly when tasks needed to be given. All these inefficiencies happened, which meant that it was just this big, messy sort of environment where no one really cared about streamlining things. It was like, nah, this is what lawyers do. We work really hard. Yeah, so.
So you came up with a few ideas, you and your co-founder. So your co-founder is
Tomo, yeah.
Yes.
When we first started as junior lawyers, we started this startup group. So before I was a lawyer, I used to run like a little digital agency. So I've got like an entrepreneurial background. And Tomo,
Spider.
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
And so my co-founder, Tomo, was working in legal tech project management stuff, which is not really an industry, but there's a small industry in Australia, and he happened to be working sort of in that. And so a lot of our discussions early on was like me talking about all my experiences running like a little digital agency, and him talking about what's happening all around the world in legal tech, and sort of using those ideas to brainstorm how we could do things better. We had this idea of, well, look, there's all these startups in Australia that need legal advice. The firm we're working at would never help them because they're too tiny. We spend most of our days, like all the other junior lawyers, just typing things into it, from handwritten notes into a computer. Why don't we pitch this idea to the management of our firm, get all your young lawyers to go out and help startups on top of their normal work? It'll be much more fun for them. They'll do it for free, but it'll be a chance for them to actually do legal work instead of just doing glorified admin. Because startups grow so quickly these days, it might be that this firm we worked at would get a relationship with the next Facebook really early, and then within a few years they would become a paying big client. So that we gave them that pitch and they loved it. And so for us, though, we were thinking, this is great. We can also use this as a way to experiment with different ways of doing legal stuff, because it's going to be our clients and we get to run them our own way. And so we built this little startup group, and that was probably the genesis of the business. Doing that, going out, meeting all these Australian startups, seeing like all these really cool tech businesses that were disrupting traditional models. And we're like, wow, this is inspiring for us. We should be doing this with law. But then also we kind of realized that heaps of startups and even just small businesses, so not like your Facebook type companies, but restaurants, cafes, or any sort of small business that was just getting started, all of them didn't have proper legal advice. A lot of them were being run by sort of young people who were digital natives and used to doing things online. And if they needed to go see a lawyer, they would go see these sort of old people in suits in the suburban office that do family law and once upon a time, spoke to a young business, but really don't know what they're doing when it comes to helping them. So we're kind of looking at this environment going, there's a huge opportunity here. Like heaps of small businesses and startups that hate going to see lawyers. Most of them don't. Or something like 80% of startups don't go see a lawyer when they have a legal problem. There was a study in 2013 that said that. So we're like, wow, no one's using lawyers. And there's all this tech and stuff available to make it way more accessible. You could do it online. You could do it way more efficiently.
So back then when you created this group within that firm, so management was quite open to your ideas when you pitched them?
Yeah, for sure. And we still have a good relationship with that firm. When we sort of eventually left and decided to do it, they were very supportive. I think in those firms, everybody sort of knows that they need to be more innovative and need to sort of push the envelope. And so when ideas are coming to them about how they can do things differently or do something a little bit more innovative, they're pretty receptive. It's just difficult for them because their whole entire core business is built on a very traditional industry. And so they're not just going to suddenly throw it out and reinvent it. To be honest, for the big law firms, I don't think it matters that much, like all this tech and stuff that we're doing. I mean, it still matters, but there's less pressure for them to be really efficient and for them to stop using paper because the clients aren't really paying them. They don't care as much about real cheap cost efficiency. They just want it to be perfect and they're happy to pay. The proposition of a big firm is like, we have the best people that have done this for 60 years and they know what they're doing. Yeah, so you can see why they're more investing in getting it right than investing in efficiency or whatever this kind of stuff that we're doing. But I think there's room there. Like technology doesn't just make things efficient, it makes them better quality, removes mistakes and all these other things. And I think they could be doing a lot more with that. But anyways, they are sort of open and receptive to it and have been supportive of us. It was probably like a slow sort of build to that moment of just meeting at lunchtime, talking about ideas, and then eventually realizing we should do this. We're going to do this. If it's now or never sort of thing. So we launched in early 2017. In late 2016, we were just looking at the market in Australia, particularly because we'd identified by that point there was this huge gap in small businesses and startups. And we were looking at a couple of other companies starting to try to tackle the problem, and they were doing pretty well. And we're like, we've seen this problem, we know a solution, and these other players are tackling the same thing. They're going to get far ahead and we'll never be able to do it if we wait 2 years. Somewhere between a software business and a service business is how I would describe us. So there wasn't heaps of software code to be written. Yeah, because I have that background working in like a digital agency and all that. That kind of helped with the web development things we needed to do at the beginning. So for the first 6 to 9 months of the business, we did everything ourselves. Made the website, wrote all the code. We outsourced things when we had to, when it got a bit too hard, called on friends and various other things. Very much a DIY job, which was hard. The good thing about legal services is it's not like, when a pure tech company starts and they're building like an app or something and they got to spend 2 years writing software code, making no money, and they just are going to go broke. With us, we quickly got our like registered law firm set up within a month, and we used them to test the model and work out what we were doing. So we had a little bit of money coming in, not much, but enough to just sort of fund our basic needs. I mean, we churned through our small amount of savings pretty quickly as well in those first 6 months, but helped us sort of invest a little bit into growing the tiny little thing that we had into a sort of business. So that was helpful. We weren't completely broke at any point, although it got pretty close at one point to us both running out of money. But yeah, I guess it was good to have a bit of money coming in.
Okay, so in hindsight, would you do anything differently when you first started?
Not heaps. The only thing I would say is we spent too long, probably even before we launched, but also after we launched, like planning things instead of just doing them.
Right.
Overthinking things that didn't need to be thought about. For example, before we went out and got, our first 10 clients, we spent ages creating like process maps of what would happen when they became a client and like all of the things that would go on from beginning to end. And if this went wrong, this would happen and blah, blah, blah. And just like before we'd actually gone through the process with the client, mapping out our innovative process of how we would do it. The second that you get your first few clients, 80% of that's crap because it was just, that's not how it goes down. And all these other problems emerge. And so I think we spent a bit too much time over planning when really we should have just gone out and gotten the clients and then built the map afterwards. Let things break and then build around them rather than trying to predict what will break. You probably need to do a little bit of planning. It's probably a happy middle ground. And I think we've got that balance right now because every time we do something now, we're pretty quick to just go out and do it. Yeah, probably back then there was a little bit too much of that. I said to people at the beginning, they're like, have you saved heaps of money up to do this? And I'm like, nah. They're like, what's wrong with you? And I said, I really want to be like stuffed. I want to be under pressure that I'm going to go bankrupt because that's going to drive me to actually do this.
Okay.
And I think that even though that sounded weird, it was probably true. Like watching your bank account go down is a pretty good motivator to go out and do the business. Like you're not going to be complacent because if you don't get your next 10 clients in the next 2 months, then you can't pay your rent. So yeah.
Okay, so that's what drives you because I guess different people as an entrepreneur have different things that drive them and it's pressure and stress that drives you.
Yeah, I think it is. That's a good way of putting it. Probably haven't thought about it in those terms, but yeah, probably deadlines or a need or some sort of like I'm running out of time kind of thing is a very good motivator to get, at least personally, get me in the zone and get me doing stuff. I kind of like to put myself in slightly uncomfortable situations so that I'm not lazy, basically.
Okay. Is Tomo the same way?
Probably a bit. I mean, I think we're slightly different personalities. I think it's a really good thing. The reason I decided to work with him in the first place, and he can probably speak as to why he decided to work with me, it might not be the same reasons, but when I met him, I'm like, this guy is a genius, but he's a genius in a way that like I almost don't understand. Like he approaches the same problems in a very different way. That's important in that if you just have someone that's very similar to you, you don't really add value to each other because you're doing the same thing twice. The motivator is to build the business and the excitement of that and watching it work. And if people ask me what motivates you, I'd say it's more about building a super efficient system. And that's what, like, I get really frustrated when things are inefficient. And so that's kind of what drives everything that we're doing, at least in the operations of the business, is like, how do we make this faster, better, easier? So that's probably the main thing that's driving me. But then when you add, and I'm also running out of cash, it's a good combo to make you actually do something.
Okay. So that's your business journey.
There's the business journey right there.
That's the secret to success.
That is the secret, yeah. Once you've created the core of the business, it becomes a lot more about the numbers. Let's not be happy with 10K a month. How are we going to get, like, what do we need to do to get to $1 million?
Hey guys, thanks for checking out this episode in a series where we interview business leaders, tech innovators, and startup founders about their business journey, insights, and reflections. If you find value in this, please leave us a comment below, and also like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Enjoy!